When I was around 4 years old, my parents divorced and had split custody. During this time, I went to daycare early in the morning when I was at my dad's because he had to go to work early. On those days, I would go back to sleep at daycare. One day specifically, when I went back to sleep, I had this crazy and intense nightmare. I can't remember all of the details anymore, but basically the premise of the nightmare was that Satan went around killing all of my friends and family. It was so weird being so young and how vivid it was. I remember a specific part where I saw my grandma dead and decapitated. There were organs around the room and blood everywhere. Outside of her house, I found a portal that brought me to hell where I faced Satan. He was blacker than black. It was an unimaginable darkness. He had horns, he was wearing a suit, and he had a gun aimed at me. That's all the details I remember before waking up. 7 years later, I moved in with my mom. I would live with her during the school year and would visit my dad during the summer months. During this time, I lived with my mom's boyfriend and his 3 children. I would often get yelled at a lot from my mom's boyfriend, and due to this, I kept to myself. At some point, I started to feel this uneasiness when the sun went down. Before I knew it, this presence started talking to me. I couldn't hear it audibly, but the voice was there. It wasn't pleasant, and I never wanted to talk back to it. It eventually led to panic attacks when I would hear it. At the start of 7th grade, I became so depressed and had thoughts of suicide because of what the presence was saying. I knew this had to be Satan. One time when I was at my dad's, I woke up around 3 a.m. with a terrible nightmare, and I looked at my door, which was cracked open. He was there, and looked just like my nightmare when I was 4. All black suit, black hair, horns, and he stood out from the darkness, but at certain times would blend in. He had gold yellowish eyes that stared right at mine, and he had this evil smirk on his face. I was terrified. I just laid there in my bed, just staring back into his gold yellow eyes. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. It felt like hours before I was able to break the stare. Once I did, I realized I was crying, and I asked him why. He smiled at me and spoke.
Because of your power.
His voice was darker than I remembered, and it was the voice of pure evil. I was confused by what he meant. Before I was able to ask, he spoke again.
You're strong, with lots of willpower. I could use that.
His smile and gaze never broke, but by this time, I got a panic attack like usual. As my panic attack got worse, his physical body disappeared, and the last thing I saw was that terrible evil grin, as that too faded away. After a few more moments, my panic attack stopped, and this wave of fatigue washed over me, and I passed out. There was a few times after when he spoke to me that I wanted to ask if he could just take this power from me and leave me alone, but I never did. A year later, he was talking less and less. During this time, he had sent minions to look after me. These demons had specific orders not to harm me or my family. He told me that I should be grateful and that he doesn't usually do that. During high school, I had a very close friend who stayed at my house often. This friend would have a terrible time falling asleep in nightmares that involved death and demons. Eventually, Satan would stop talking to me altogether, but he didn't call off his demons. Once going to college, I no longer heard Satan, and I didn't feel like I was being followed. I thought this was over, but when I went to either of my parents' places, I felt demons. One time at my mom's, specifically, this demon became very menacing. It felt so much darker than it did before. I managed to deal with it with prayers, smudging, and having a cross with me everywhere I went in the house. The next time I visited my mom or dad's, there was nothing. Just nothing. Still to this day, I don't know what this power is that I have that Satan wanted, or why he stopped talking to me, or what happened to the demon that was following me. Don't get me wrong, I am so happy it's over, but I'm still so confused on everything and why it happened. I haven't seen anything like this online. I have seen stuff like soul selling or possession or things like that, but not anything along the line that Satan was attracted to someone due to a power that they possess.